For this 16th issue of the Quarry, Journal of Student Creative Writing, we invited the writers to participate in an interview about their work. Author interviews are a new initiative for the journal, and as you will see, the interviews were conducted via Zoom and not face-to-face due to COVID-19 social isolation restrictions. Now, join the writers as they decode their writing process, inspirations, and stories for us.
My name's Lauren Fauna. I am an English high school teacher. I'm also a counsellor, and I have almost completed a Master's in Creative Writing at Macquarie University.
Hey, my name's Jackie Gregg. I wrote a piece that was creative or is creative non-fiction for the Quarry. The piece is called Deadly Traffic, and it's a piece that's about the COVID-19 pandemic, and it concentrates on the origins of the pandemic and also its relationship to various global, important global things like global warming, trafficking of animals, and sort of the start of the pandemic, what exactly has happened.
My name is Jonathan. People in Australia call me Jono, but I'm not very particular. I answer to both. I am an international student studying in the same Masters of Creative Writing program as most of the Quarry people who are currently doing the same unit, actually. And this is my my second year in Sydney. And Sydney happens to be the 5th city that I've stayed in, at least long term.
Oh, I'm Jody Ramadine. Well, I am the deputy editor of Grapeshot, and I'm currently sitting in the Grapeshot office because it's crazy time and I don't have Wi-Fi at home. I've worked on a few different issues of the Quarry. I worked on issue 12, White Noise, as like an editor. Before I actually took the capstone unit for the class that focuses on the Quarry.
My name's Ailish. I'm currently studying at Macquarie University. I'm in 4th year, and I'm majoring in creative writing. Yeah, I really love it, and I've really enjoyed the degree so far.
So I'm Elizabeth White, and I'm in the Masters of Creative Writing program. At Quarry. So this is my 3rd year that I'm doing a Master of Arts, where I studied literature there, but I guess after that I wanted to learn more about writing, because I think probably I had an unrealized wish to be a writer one day, but probably was a bit too afraid to give it a go.
My name is Swarna. I'm initially from Sri Lanka. In say about 6-7 years ago, I just got into my head that I want to write. I was always reading. I was a very a reader all the time, but then the thought came to me that I want to write something, especially because I thought I'm now here in Melbourne, and my children were very little when we came here, so I was thinking they don't know much about the history or roots or anything. So that's how I thought I should get into writing. And because I didn't know anything about writing, so I started learning about it. I did the bachelor's, and I just started doing my master's in creative writing.
Really intrigued by the theme, this moment in time, and I wanted to kind of like challenge the idea of time itself, though, that like even though you think time is constant and unchangeable, there are things that you can actually do to change it and change how time kind of affects your life. So I wanted to kind of like use that theme and like because I thought it was a really intriguing theme. So like if you actually take a chance and kind of like live in that moment in time, you're able to effectively change time and how it affects your life, and that but if you don't take chances and stuff, then time will continue to kind of like control you, and it'll pass by, really. So it was a fun theme. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, because this story doesn't it doesn't focus on COVID-19 or, you know, actual this moment in 2020 time.
Yeah.
But I guess some of the things that we've been feeling through this are things that we can feel at different points in time in life too. So when I started thinking about writing something for this issue, I did sort of try and focus on, well, what are, if you could break down sort of some of the key issues that we might be feeling, knowing that everyone's going through something different. I guess it brought me back to this character. And
I wasn't sure when the theme was conceived, but when everything happened with COVID-19, I suppose I just thought there'll be a lot of writing about that topic, and that's where my mind went when I thought of the theme. So my short story that I wrote for the issue isn't 100% focused on COVID, but it sort of takes place in the COVID world of quarantine.
My pieces for this issue of The Quarry, which is this moment in time, because poetry was one of the ways that I spent my time in isolation, and I found it quite comforting to be able to tap into some of the different experiences that I had during that time and express them through poetry. And it also really honed my ideas that I wanted to express. I think this sort of time period that we're going through at the moment, with so much tumult and upheaval and uncertainty, really focused me on what was important. And so my first poem that I submitted, which is called Not a Big Deal, really focused on how I thought that maybe some of the voices weren't actually being heard or represented in all of the media coverage and things about COVID. And my second poem on the breaking down of leaves was, I guess it really highlighted, for me, spending time in nature is so important, and I think that's something that we really lost and really missed.
The way I interpreted this moment in time was basically the experiences that myself, as well as my friends, both here in Sydney and around the world, have experienced firsthand with regards to feeling a bit more seen and not necessarily in the best light possible. So because of the way the way I wrote it was the colonial gaze, in the sense that you feel a bit more of this kind of like negative pressure that is put on you. There's this way where it's more than a passing glance.
A topic, the coronavirus wasn't there, and now it's the kind of a major thing. So that's how it went to my head. And look, I'm working in the hospital, and so it just, the next day when Jane said, why don't you submit that story, the next day when I was going to work, that's when I thought, oh, okay, I'll write something about this testing.
I think that was it. When I started hearing those reports of, sort of simplistic solutions to what's such a terribly complicated problem that they're only now going to start working on.
The thought came to my mind that if somebody had someone at home sick, and for whatever the reason they didn't want to say that, they could say everything's okay. So that's how this thought came to me, and then I developed it into, I was thinking, why would someone want to hide this? And then I thought, what if somebody's partner maybe is an illegal immigrant or something like that? And so I myself is a migrant, so I thought, so that's how this idea came. And then I started writing it, and then that's what happened. Yeah.
Deal was something that I wrote specifically for this issue, because it was something that I felt really strongly about, and it was something that made me really angry when I read lots of the media coverage, and so that the thing that I was really missing was my contact with nature. So I'd written on the breaking down of leaves a few months ago when I was gardening, and I'd come across all of these leaf skeletons, and I actually did a series of photographs of them.
And so my piece concentrates a lot on the theory of the start of the pandemic, that it was transmitted from from bats to an intermediate host to humans. How exactly that happened, we don't know. One of the suspected intermediate hosts was the pangolin, and that's why I chose to write this about, it's not only about the pangolin, but it's an important thing. Even if this animal is not found to be the ultimate link, what is important is how the smuggling and traffic of endangered species is not just an issue for those animals, but it's an issue for humanity as a whole.
I got the idea for the piece at like 5 o'clock in the morning, which was fun. I swear it happens to a lot of creatives. You're just kind of laying there and all of a sudden it appears in your mind. But yeah, I kind of got the idea because I was kind of trying to think of something, and I got the first line of "Oh, you're nervous," and that was just stuck in my head. And I wanted to do a piece that if you just make one small change in your life and you actually decide to go after something that you want, even if it is very small, that you are actually able to change your life significantly. You might not know it at the time, but if you actually do something, then you can change things. But yeah, that's how I kind of like originally got the idea for it. I wanted to go back to sleep, but I couldn't, so.
I suppose I wanted to work on a sort of alumni issue. Every time I've written something for the Quarry, it's been as part of like a class. The competition was a big factor. The Future Leaders Creative Writing Prize. I know that would just seem like an exciting thing to apply for.
I think I thought that you had to have some sort of magical gift, but there actually are tools and things you can learn, and you can get better at it. You don't just have to be born magically a writer. So that's been really good for me.
I have been a teacher and a counsellor at a school for really disadvantaged students. So the students who are basically all of our students live in poverty. We've got a really high percentage of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students as well. Mm-hmm. And working with them gives me a really interesting perspective on what's important. And I think part of the reason that I do really love working with them is, even though I'm not teaching those really classic canonical texts, I'm helping them to shape their voice in terms of, we've got a few students who have had really traumatic experiences, and they like to write raps, extended metaphor of those people who give and give and give quietly to nourish the talents and the passions of other people, and obviously that ties into my passion for teaching as well. So after I'd written it as an extended metaphor, I stepped back and thought about, that's probably something that I see in myself. And I realised that those final couple of lines about a trumpeted score was something that I have probably pursued more for myself.
To be honest, it's not just pangolins. It's a problem because of where I grew up and because of being exposed to wild animals and nature a lot. I have concern about many wild animals, and not just in Africa, all over the world. But I guess I have a special place for African animals because I saw them and I grew up with them. So I guess I saw it as, this is an animal that's really beautiful, that a lot of people don't know about, even though it's the most trafficked animal in the world. And this is a way, because people are really invested in this pandemic. It's affected all of us. There's no one who doesn't know about it, who doesn't talk about it. So this is a way to try and link it to make people understand that it's linked to important issues. So I don't think it was just my attachment to that animal, although I do love them. It's my attachment to all wild animals and wild places, and the importance that we've forgotten perhaps of protecting them. Yeah.
My tone sounds definitely has an opinion when it comes to it. It's because it's not just me on the outside looking into the thing. It's me being on the inside and saying, this is how I feel. These are how people of my skin tone feel. And this is not a new thing. It's the way, I think the example I gave in the actual article was, it's how the Japanese American citizens from our grandparents' generation were labeled as the foreign spies, and they were mass incarcerated. It was how during the Vietnam War, our parents' generation, when it's the Asian American soldier that is being pulled out from their ranks and saying, this is what the enemy looks like, even though they are American citizens. And it's the fact that it's generational, it's not new. And I would say this is how it has manifested in this generation.
And I know that a lot of people, some won't come to this country, wanting to start a new life, and for whatever the reason they come, and then sometimes they get stuck somewhere and they can't go anywhere, they can't work, they don't have visa, so lots of problems. And yeah, so I'm interested in all that. And
I wanted to I guess keep the protagonists as genderless, so when the when the writer is actually when the reader is reading it, they can either imagine themselves in it or whoever they want it to be. And when I was writing it though, because I'm heterosexual cis female, I kind of imagined the protagonist to be male, but I still wanted to keep it genderless, so you could be whatever you wanted when you were reading it as the reader. And I also wanted to I really like a strong narrative voice, so I wanted to do that, the I as time. So time is kind of like looking over you as the protagonist as things are happening. That was really fun, but it was also challenging as well.
Definitely. I 100% procrastinate. I was procrastinating as I wrote it, and then I wrote a story about procrastination.
That process is really interesting because I usually write prose fantasy stuff, so I really wanted to challenge myself and do something different. And I have written other short pieces in second person and first person, but I wanted to write something a bit longer as well. And I've never actually done a mashup between prose and poetry, so again, that's why I was like, I really want to try this and give it a go. But yeah, it was really fun, and it was really interesting. I think it worked quite well with the genre that I decided to stick with, because it's like kind of like romance and stuff. And yeah, I didn't when I first started writing it, I didn't expect it to end up to be such a cute like romance story, but then it did, which was really cool. I really like what I came up with.
I was procrastinating for a week and I was trying to think of something to write for a workshop I was doing for my degree. And I was trying to think of something within the genre I like to write in, which is weird fiction. And in weird fiction, a lot of the time, there'll be an element of magical realism within an otherwise ordinary world. So the creature I write about is, I suppose, supposed to be a bit of a metaphor for procrastination. So as my main character sort of continues to procrastinate, the creature grows and grows. But that version of the story I've already edited and updated, so already it's almost about a different thing, but it's just interesting. Yeah.
I guess I probably write for the reader that's like me, and that would like to read something like I would like to read, and often And I think it starts from a spot where, you know, I think of a scenario or a character and I can't get out of my head, you know, the questions around that character and how they might respond to whatever.
I don't have a wonderful imagination, I don't think. So I just find it easy. If it's something that I've experienced, then it's so much easier to describe it and to explain how you felt because, well, you're there. So you're really just writing your thoughts and your feelings. Yeah.
And so that poem really came out in, I think it was about 10 minutes. And when I went back and edited it later, I inserted that apostrophe like directed towards the person that was listening or reading it, to kind of invite them in to that experience. But it wasn't something that had percolated for a long time. It was just something quite immediate that I produced.
Studying my master's in creative writing, my bachelor was in media, actually. And one of the topics that we covered theory-wise was post-colonialism. And the three foremost thinkers and the three foremost theorists that more or less shaped the worldwide study of post-colonialism, I have referenced in the actual piece itself, which is Frantz Fanon, Edward Said, and Homi Bhabha. Excuse me. And I feel the way to tackle something as layered as that is to really draw on a lot of the academic stuff. So I've definitely placed a lot of quotes and emphasis on the actual academic.
My son's living with me, and he gives me feedback, and usually I get upset with him. He says things and then he says, why do you waste my time? You wanted feedback and I'm telling you this doesn't make sense. And
writing about personal things, to be able to translate that into something that somebody else can understand and relate to if they don't have the experiences that I do, I try and do that through really minute detail. So in On the Breaking Down of Leaves, you know, there is that most of the poem is spent describing these really, you know, very concrete aspects of what the leaves look like at different stages and where you would find them and what they're doing, and to then link that in a metaphorical way to, I guess, human cycles of change and, you know, the inevitability that we're all going to end up there is, I guess, you need to make the leap from the personal to the human, because otherwise, you know, people will read it and say, oh, that's a really nice poem about a leaf.
Part of my training, my medical training, was to explain complicated issues to patients. That's what we do all the time.
First thing that I wrote, I tweeted the first thing that I tweeted was actually the first line of the article itself. Racism isn't getting worse, it's getting attention. And I feel like the current COVID-19 situation, the whole pandemic thing, has really turned it from a very covert thing into a very overt thing. It's kind of given a reason for people who, whether intentional or not, are racist, right? It's noticeable specifically, not just the fact that the Chinatown districts and the Chinese restaurant sales are being, no, it's also including, I wouldn't say personal friends, but definitely friends of friends have experienced actual physical abuse, violent abuse.
I think when I look on my writing, I think, how can I improve it? And if it's not there yet, then I never really feel any attachment to it.
As I do have a message behind it. I feel like a lot of writing should, in some ways, inspire the reader to, especially because I think with the theme that I wanted people to, be entertained by the story as well, but use as a form of inspiration, that they should, you know, more live in the moment, try not to worry about things, and more to take chances and stuff as well. Yeah.
Thing that I guess learnt through this piece, and I have numerous times through this course as well, is that a piece of writing isn't finished the first time round. And I think I've learnt over and over again that when you finish something, you know, that's only the first time. You have to revisit it again and again. And the drafting process, I think, is a lot lengthier than I used to think that it would be. You know, and I guess with previous university study that I've done, I definitely would write things, you know, right up to the due date, and that would be okay for, say, like something that's a bit more like an essay responding to a question. But with fiction writing, I've definitely found that, you know, you can't leave something to the last minute, because the drafting and the reviewing process takes a lot of time. And I find for myself as well, when I finish something, I really have to leave it alone. And even when I get feedback, I have to leave it alone for at least a week or a couple of weeks before I can come back and feel detached enough, I think, to be a bit more sober in how I look at it, and then see, oh yeah, what that person said actually, you know, does make a lot of sense. I need to take that aboard, where I think sometimes if I do that too quickly, it can feel a bit too personal.
The thing that I have taken away from that the most is that the best writing is the most immediate that you can make it. So verbosity has no place, and I think the best writing really captures the spirit of a moment or the spirit of an experience.
I'm more interested in what the reader makes of it than what I intend, because oftentimes when people read it, they'll tell me they'll think different things about it. And sometimes, you know, I like how they've interpreted it maybe more than I initially intended it myself. So, yeah, however people interpret is always interesting to me. And I don't have a specific way that it needs to be read, or like a specific message that has to come across.
To learn compassion. Because we are so deeply connected to very different social realities. I put this, I think, in the conclusion of the actual piece itself. Because we're so deeply connected to the disparity of our social realities, we cannot learn compassion because we refuse to look at each other through each other's eyes.
Complicated, and every little thing we do, it's like the butterfly effect. Everything we do has another effect on the world, and we need to be aware of that. And it's hard, because what can one person do? I get that feeling often, oh, this problem's too big. What can we do? But every person doing something makes a huge difference.